Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Freedman. Our next guest up is Mike Russell, founder of Hope for Hardship. Mike, welcome to Radio Entrepreneurs.
Thank you very much. I'm honored for the opportunity.
So, as many entrepreneurs, you have a story that emanates from some personal experience. So, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your background and what it is that you do in your organization?
Sure. So Hope for Hardship is an organization that helps people avoid foreclosure. Homeowners, that's the most challenging thing to face as a homeowner is foreclosure and the lifeline of owning a home. It also helps bank. I suppose the technical thing of what we do would be called, we mitigate loss on collateralized debt for both the consumer and the bank. And how I got into this is,
sounds very technical. I mean, I could follow it, but why don't you tell people what that really means?
So, okay, right. So mitigating loss on collateralized debt. So debt that is secured by an asset, that's real estate typically, right, with the mortgage. And so banks don't want to be in the real estate business. So banks don't want to foreclose. They don't want to own properties. And homeowners, of course, don't want to be foreclosed on. And so there are mitigation efforts that we put into place to help people do that. There are really only two buckets of loss mitigation. There's retention options where the homeowner retains the property, and there are non-retention where they dispose of the asset in some fashion. 95% of homeowners who fall behind on their mortgage want to retain their property. And all banks want the homeowner to stay in the property. They don't want to foreclose. And so we go to work on a relatively systematic approach of helping these folks and creating assistance applications for various programs that are available out there and through the bank themselves. And we help them with the creation of those applications, the production of supporting documentation, and to build a case on why they will be able to get back in the good graces with the bank and continue on keeping the home.
So interesting, Mike. It sounds as though you found that space between where the banks don't want to play, i.e., working well, whether it's workout or whether it's a foreclosure or what have you, because it's just not great business for them, right? Typically, if they're foreclosing on a property, they're probably taking an even bigger loss than if they allow a homeowner to stay in a home. And obviously for a homeowner, if they've got equity and they want to stay in their home and everybody needs shelter, you're helping them solve that issue as well.
Yeah.
So you saw that space in between where you could offer value. And tell us a little bit about how large the problem is, because with everything else going on in the world, we probably don't get a lot of it seems to me that foreclosure numbers, when they make it to the headlines, it's bad. And there's probably a lot of not really great stuff that's going on in a challenging economy for people, but we're just not hearing it.
Sure. So I believe it's always cyclical what happens in the real estate market, right? And so for comparison purposes, 08, 9, 10, 11, 12, there were 650 to 700 notices of intent to foreclose recorded in the Massachusetts land court every week. That's the worst it's ever been, and God willing, the worst it'll ever be. Today, that number is about 100. There are 100 notices of intent to foreclose recorded in land court every week in Massachusetts in the last year.
And just for those of us who are not overly knowledgeable about it, that's not a quick process. It takes a lot to get to the point of foreclosure.
Yes, absolutely, right. And everything in Massachusetts is a little slow, especially when the courts are involved. And so, yes, of course, it takes time. But really, the segment of the market that I believe we really stick out with is that I do this for free. I don't ask any money from anybody ever to help them do this. And that is in large part just from my own experience in my life. And so the way that I got into this, I've been in the real estate business my entire life. And so I've owned and operated a Century 21 franchise really for the last 30 years. And so I got to see every segment of the real estate journey of human beings, from the first-time home buyers and how elated they are during that process. And then through 08, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, I worked for the banks. I worked for Freddie Mac, and we dispersed of, listed, and sold more than 1,000 foreclosed properties in and around southeastern Massachusetts. And I got to witness lockouts, where a family is greeted by a sheriff and two movers and a box truck, where they say, everything you can fit in the truck, you can take. We'll store it for 30 days. When we're finished, we're changing the locks and you're out on the curb. So I've seen every dynamic as it relates to that. But what really spurred this creation of this nonprofit for me was my own experience with that, my own experience with foreclosure in my life, bankruptcy, financial chaos. But what I don't think anyone in the world can fake is shared struggle. And I believe that. And the thing that really affected me most in my life was the collateral damage that ripped through my family as a result of that chaos for the better part of a decade. It took me 10 years. It took me all of 10 years to resolve those issues within my family and to turn my own life around. So that's a big part of my story. The turnaround is what I look to elicit in people. I look to be an inflection point in the lifeline of people that creates a positive trajectory. And I didn't always do that in my life. I would enter someone's lifeline and I could often be guilty of making a negative trajectory as an inflection point. And so at this time of my life, I don't do that anymore. And I try to come into these people's lives because this is a lot more than just about money and finances. This is about human beings and the human condition. When I went through this, I probably had 2 years worth of mail sitting on my dining room table because I knew there was no good news in it. In hindsight, all the answers to my problems were in that mail. And so I meet people like that on a daily basis who are in the same exact condition that I was, or some form of it. And I do my level best to help them get out of it and turn their lives around.
So really interesting story, and kudos to you for turning things around. But it sounds like, as you talk about that collateral damage, the impact on your family, and on your personal life, sounds like it was something that obviously nobody would want to go through, and you've developed this organization try and help people prevent them from experiencing the same types of things. What is it systemically, or is there a systemic issue that gets us to a place, or is it merely, economic cycles and, health, job loss? I mean, everybody's story is different, but we're all vulnerable, right? That same thing. I look at you as a person who said you've been in real estate your entire life, and that can happen to you. Even understand the underlying economics and the mechanics and all of it. Imagine the average person with not a lot of experience or financial savvy or understanding of the real estate marketplace and how it works. So the problem, or the must lie just under the surface for millions and millions of people. I would imagine it's a very large potential problem.
Yeah,
So
it is. Yeah.
So as an advocate, as somebody who's gone through it, what do you see as your trajectory, your mission? Do you see it, potentially? And I know laws are different in every state and how that is handled, but clearly you're focused on a beginning geography. Do you see a scale to something more regional or national in nature?
Sure. Absolutely. I would love for this to be national, and that's my ultimate end goal. I'd love to support homeowners across the country in this effort. The one thing that is the same in every state is no bank wants to foreclose and no homeowner wants to be foreclosed on. And so that common bond makes my work possible anywhere in the country. As far as everyone's hardship is different in nature, of course, I would say that a smaller percentage of them weren't avoidable. We are all guilty at times of creating our own bed. And that is, I would say, the majority of the issues were avoidable. There are, of course, some health-related issues, and I see some domestic violence, and I see things that create true hardships that were unavoidable. But a lot of them are avoidable, and That's just the human condition, I think.
And I think it's interesting also that it seems to me from some experience that there's almost two personality types when people face hardship. There's the one that buries their head in the sand and hopes that it's going to go away. And it sounds like, if I may say, you took a little bit of that approach. Not opening your mail for 2 years is like the problem's going to change. And then there's people who, get their chest up and go right at it head on and say, it's another challenge that I'm going to tackle in my life. Has that been your experience that there's sort of people fall into one of those
Yes.
two camps?
Yeah, and so the former would win the award on that one. And that's just the reality of it. I really believe that it is, we get into denial. I see entitlement. I see things where people just do not want to face the reality of what is coming. And that is, I spend the majority of my time trying to get people out of their own way. And that's really what I spend the vast majority of the time that I'm speaking. I am trying to get someone to just get out of their own way. I consider myself an effective communicator, but I have gotten better at not carrying their refusal to do so. And that happens sometimes. Some people just refuse to see what's coming. And those stories don't end very well. About, I'd say, 98% of the time you can avoid foreclosure in America. There are those very small instances where there is so much money owed on the asset, it's so underwater, the bank will not consider loss mitigation options and they insist on foreclosing. I met someone this week who hasn't paid their mortgage since 2009.
Wow.
They're
And they're still in their home.
They're still in their home. Yeah.
So back to my prior point, it doesn't happen overnight.
No, no,
and, and to your point,
right.
the banks don't want it to happen. They want a solution that puts, what banks do, put money in their coffers and they move on. They don't want ailing pieces of real estate on their portfolios.
It's absolutely correct, and it
Because
doesn't. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, sorry, I was going to say, I would imagine with homes that are, on the brink of foreclosure, you probably have a lot of other deferred maintenance issues and all types of issues that happen. If you don't have the money to pay a mortgage, you're not upgrading your systems, so to speak. So,
And that's the biggest
um,
reason. That's the biggest reason banks don't want to foreclose, because they live in fear that when someone stops paying their mortgage, that the property is going to fall into disrepair, become abandoned, and that becomes a big problem for them if the asset needs significant amount of work in order for them to resell it. That's one of their biggest fears. So they prefer to mitigate losses within any reason. And this has been the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my career. Like I said, I've been in this business, and it's an outstanding education in human behavior, far better than any formal education I ever got. It allows me the opportunity to give back to the next man or woman what I learned the hard way. These people, these people become friends. I had dinner Saturday night with a great friend of mine who was unable to retain the property. We ended up moving on from the property, and 2 years later, he and his wife and his beautiful kids bought a new home, got their credit back on track, purchased a new home in a much nicer area. That is one of the biggest success stories that I've ever seen, is to leave a property that was really, for all intents and purposes, falling down around them. But it's an interesting thing how that can happen to someone and they can't even see it while it's happening. And
wow. Well,
yeah,
I'm sure you've got a lot of the tremendous stories, and kudos
yeah,
to you for trying to solve what for many people perhaps outside of health is their single biggest concern, being able to put a roof over their families' heads and keeping that home above water, so to speak.
yeah.
Mike, if people want to reach out to you, we could probably do a whole other segment talking about
Sure,
the
man.
organization and how you're funded
Absolutely.
and all those types of things, but want to give you an opportunity if people want to reach out to you, if people are having challenges, what's the best way for them to engage with you?
Sure. You can speak with me personally, 508-501-9214. You can go to my website at hope for the number 4 hardship.org, and read all about what we do and learn a little bit about my own story. So I'd be grateful for anyone who did that, and I'm honored to help.
Wonderful. Mike Russell, founder, Hope for Hardship. It's been a real pleasure having you on Radio Entrepreneurs, and we look forward to you helping out many other individuals that need your assistance. And sounds like you're doing wonderful work over there.
Outstanding. I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
Excellent. And we'll be right back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs.